weeks after the horrifying incident in Utah that sent shockwaves across the nation and claimed the life of conservative figure Charlie Kirk, his parents have finally stepped into the public eye. Their quiet appearance at an official White House ceremony has reopened the conversation, stirring unease and questions no one seems able to answer. Who are they really? Why the silence? And what secrets lie behind the family of one of America's most polarizing voices? In this video, we uncover the hidden truth about Charlie Kirk's parents and the haunting role they played in the aftermath. The memorial service, held on September 21st at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, carried a heavy stillness. The crowd of thousands sat beneath harsh fluorescent lights, cameras whispering quietly in the corners. It wasn't just a farewell, it was an event that felt almost staged, almost too calm. And then, from the shadows, two faces appeared. According to multiple reports, Charlie's parents, Robert W. Kirk and Catherine Kirk, sat alone in the very back row. No cameras turned toward them. No speeches, no statements, no flowers marked with their name. They arrived without a word and left the same way. But it was that silence, that eerie, deliberate silence, that made everyone look twice. It was a moment both deeply public and painfully private, a moment that cut through the noise of a country still struggling to face what really happened in Utah. One by one, the nation's political elite took the stage, their words blending patriotism with grief. But while the spotlight blazed bright, the Kirks stayed in the shadows, unmoving, unreadable, untouchable. Their silence didn't feel like grief. It felt like control, quiet, calculated, and heavy with meaning. Analysts later called it one of the most chilling acts of restraint in recent memory. In a time where every tragedy is turned into a headline, the Kirks' refusal to speak became its own kind of power. And when Turning Point USA held its second major memorial days later, a televised spectacle featuring President Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, and other household names, the Kirks were nowhere to be found. Not a glimpse, not a word, not a trace. Their absence became louder than any eulogy. It was a silence that demanded interpretation, a missing piece in a story too big, too strange to ignore. And maybe you're wondering the same thing I am. Who are they really, and why are they still silent? Charlie Kirk once called him his pastor. The pastor, in return, called Charlie his friend. He recalls standing beside him in Korea just weeks before the tragedy, watching him fight for persecuted Christians with the same passion that once defined his public life. According to cultural and legal observers, the Kirks' decision to remain silent during this storm wasn't random. It followed a pattern. A refusal to let grief become ammunition in a political war. Their silence wasn't emptiness, it was structure. Controlled. Precise. Almost engineered to protect the last fragile pieces of their privacy. What the world witnessed that day wasn't two parents broken by loss. It was two people clinging to the only power they still had, the power to stay silent. And in an age that feeds on noise, hashtags, and outrage, that silence roared louder than any tribute echoing through the stadium. Because behind the fire that once symbolized Charlie Kirk stood two ordinary souls, Robert and Catherine Kirk. Long before their son's name filled headlines, they were just a small Midwestern family built on faith, work, and quiet purpose. That humble beginning may explain their choice: silence over spectacle, dignity over drama, and truth over narrative. As the cameras rolled outside, live reports described the growing crowd. Around 300 people have gathered, one reporter noted. We're waiting to see who steps off the plane. But the Kirks, as always, stayed invisible. Public records later revealed their roots: Prospect Heights, a quiet suburb northwest of Chicago. Robert W. Kirk, the father, was an architect known not for fame, but for precision. His work on landmark projects like Trump Tower in New York earned quiet respect. His wife, Catherine, chose a path of empathy, mental health counseling. Her world was built on listening, on healing what couldn't be seen. Together, they built two kinds of foundations, one of concrete and glass, the other of strength and spirit. Friends described them as kind, grounded, and private, a couple who helped others but never sought the spotlight. They weren't political. They weren't loud. They simply believed in balance, in conversation, and in staying true to themselves. Their values clashed with the world their son would later enter, a world of microphones, rallies, and controversy. As Charlie's curiosity grew, so did the distance between that quiet home and the noise of public life. He was drawn to the pulse of conservative radio, where voices like Rush Limbaugh filled his young mind with ideas, conviction, and challenge. What began as curiosity turned into passion and, eventually, purpose. Meanwhile, Robert and Catherine remained the same, watchful, silent, and steady. They didn't intervene, didn't guide his politics. They simply watched their son carve his path. When Turning Point USA was born, when the speeches and TV appearances began, they stayed where they had always been, behind the scenes, unseen but present. At first, that silence seemed ordinary. But over time, it became their signature. Sociologists later described them as the quiet opposites of their son's intensity, the calm to his chaos, the shadow to his spotlight. Their silence wasn't emptiness. It was philosophy. Before America became divided by loud voices and sharper opinions, there was a family built on calm, on reason, on restraint. The Kirks of Prospect Heights, once an unremarkable suburban family, became a silent reflection of the very storm their son created. Their town, with its green lawns and close-knit neighbors, once knew them simply as Robert, Catherine, and Charlie, a warm, middle-class family. Robert worked long days designing skyscrapers, Catherine counseled those seeking peace, and together they raised their son in quiet discipline and faith. Charlie attended Wheeling High, then Harper College. Those who knew him remember his sharp mind, his restless curiosity, his hunger to challenge everything. Teachers called him bold, sometimes defiant, but always thinking, always questioning. "How do you define fraud?" he once asked. "What is the real purpose of college?" Even then, his voice carried the tone of someone destined to provoke thought and controversy. To his parents, it was just youthful energy, a healthy outlet for a growing mind. They were proud, but cautious. Proud when he took the stage, cautious when the spotlight turned too bright. But as his fame grew, their calm world began to fracture. The small town that once offered peace became the backdrop of a much larger story, a story of ambition, belief, and the cost of privacy. Today, Prospect Heights remains the same on the surface: quiet streets, trimmed lawns, and friendly waves. But for those who remember the Kirks, that calm carries a ghost of what once was, and what silence still hides. The tree-lined streets, the quiet lawns, the familiar houses of Prospect Heights, they all look unchanged. But for Robert and Catherine Kirk, this place is no longer home. It's a memory, a shadow of what once was the soil where their son's ambitions first took root, and where a family that once avoided politics began its slow, unintentional transformation. The builder and the healer. Two lives running parallel, both built on precision and purpose. Robert W. Kirk spent decades shaping skylines. As a licensed architect in Illinois, his career carried him from modest suburban homes to soaring commercial towers across Chicago. For Robert, architecture wasn't just work, it was language. Every line he drew spoke of order, patience, and purpose. Colleagues describe him as methodical, quiet, but relentless. A measure twice, speak once kind of man, someone who believed discipline and integrity were stronger than fame or applause. Catherine Kirk, his wife, followed a different blueprint. A counselor by profession, she built her life around empathy and understanding. Her work was healing, not through escape, but through confrontation and truth. Those who know her describe a woman of calm strength, warm eyes, firm voice, and the rare gift of listening without judgment. Together, they embodied two sides of the same spirit: Robert, who built with steel and glass, Catherine, who rebuilt with faith and compassion. Their story mirrors the American ideal itself: design, resilience, and the courage to rebuild. Charlie once quoted something that still echoes: "Only in America can you say, 'I disagree with where this country is going,' and then do something about it." That belief, that restlessness, ran deep in the Kirk home. Their world was a delicate balance of logic and emotion. Robert's desk was stacked with blueprints and rulers, Catherine's with psychology journals and case notes. Their bookshelves blended both, architectural models beside counseling guides. Visitors described their home as peaceful, structured, yet warm, where design met empathy and every dinner turned into a thoughtful debate. Discussions would shift from the art of architecture to the architecture of the human mind. It was in this environment that Charlie Kirk learned his first lessons that structure gives strength and understanding gives endurance. From his father, he learned that systems built right can survive pressure. From his mother, he learned that people, when understood, can too. Their parenting was never strict nor soft, it was balanced, built on one unshakable belief: challenges don't break people, they build them. But as Charlie's voice grew louder and his political ambition began to eclipse the family's quiet existence, those early values were tested. The builder and the healer, once united by stability, now found themselves watching their son rise into a world that was louder, harsher, and far less forgiving. Still, the foundation they built within him never vanished. You can see it in his discipline, in his confidence, in the way he never shied away from conflict. Robert and Catherine's influence became the invisible frame behind his public life, design and empathy, resilience and restoration, holding up a man whose words divided millions. Inside their home, politics was never the heartbeat. Conversations revolved around architecture, psychology, and service, not ideology. They voted in nearly every election, but did so carefully, never out of loyalty to any side. Friends described them as the embodiment of moderation, aware, but never argumentative. Charlie, however, began to hear something different. Around the age of 15, curiosity turned into discovery. Late nights, the hum of a radio, and voices that offered something his family rarely did: certainty. Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity. To a restless teenager, their conviction was electrifying. They transformed his confusion into direction, his curiosity into belief. And maybe that's where it all began, the first seed of conviction that would one day turn a quiet boy from Prospect Heights into one of America's loudest voices. The words hit like a spark in dry grass. I think feminism has gone too far in trying to turn women into men, and now it's trying to do the opposite, to turn men into women. It was one of Charlie Kirk's first quotes to explode across the internet, bold, unfiltered, and unapologetically provocative. But behind that confidence, something inside the Kirk household began to shift. Robert Kirk was the first to notice. He once confided to a colleague, "Charlie doesn't want to solve problems. He wants to win arguments." Catherine, always the calm center, tried to steady the storm. She encouraged her son to read more, to explore all sides, to seek balance instead of battle. But Charlie wasn't listening anymore. By the time he entered high school, his curiosity had turned into conviction. He had found his weapon: words. Debates became speeches, speeches became rallies, and soon his name began appearing in local newspapers. The Kirks watched with mixed pride and fear. Their son was making history, but in a way that no longer felt like home. The once soft-spoken boy who used to ask questions had become a voice that divided millions. It was a quiet but defining fracture, a moderate family that birthed a radical son, a father who built to preserve, a mother who healed to reconcile, and a son who thrived on conflict. To outsiders, it looked like destiny. To those inside the family, it felt like distance, an unstoppable drift away from peace into provocation. Still, the Kirks never stopped supporting him. They just stepped back, slowly, carefully, deliberately, choosing silence in a world addicted to noise. While Charlie's speeches filled stadiums, his parents remained invisible. No interviews, no statements, no profiles, nothing. In an age of cameras and constant exposure, Robert and Catherine Kirk vanished into quiet dignity. They had no social media, no digital footprint, no trace of public life, just a house in Prospect Heights where the lights stayed dim and the questions went unanswered. Neighbors say they never avoided pride, but they avoided spectacle. "They're proud of him," one said softly. "They just don't want to be part of the show." And that's what made them such a haunting contrast to their son. He lived for the crowd, they lived for calm. Charlie stood beneath spotlights, shouting, "How we doing, Georgia?" This is a historic moment. His parents sat quietly in their old home, where the only applause came from the wind brushing against the window. People began to wonder, was their silence a strategy or something deeper? Some believed it was protection, a way to shield themselves from the chaos surrounding Charlie's name. Others said it was silent protest, a quiet disagreement with what he had become. Maybe it was both. But their silence became louder than any statement. In a time when every family of a famous person turns into part of the brand, Robert and Catherine refused to play along. They became the architects of silence, building walls of dignity around a name that never stopped echoing. And when tragedy struck, the September 10th incident at Utah Valley University that shook the nation, it wasn't just the shock of what happened, but the name attached to it, Kirk. Rumors spread like wildfire. The internet roared. Everyone demanded answers. But the parents who had once built cities and healed hearts did what they'd always done. They said nothing. Television screens across America lit up with chaos. Footage from Utah played on loop, flashing sirens, broken glass, blurred faces. News anchors dissected every second, while pundits dug into the suspect's past, political ties, and family connections. And soon, one name dominated the headlines, Kirk. Social media exploded with anger and confusion. Theories flooded every corner of the internet. But amid the storm of voices, two people were nowhere to be found, Robert and Catherine Kirk. No statement, no lawyer, no spokesperson, just silence. Outside their gated Glendale estate, cameras waited through the night. Reporters whispered through fences. But the house stayed dark, lights off, curtains drawn, the kind of silence that doesn't just hide, it haunts. To some, their silence felt like denial. To others, unbearable grief. And to a few, it looked like strategy, a deliberate move to stay away from a world hungry for blame. But behind the restraint was something deeper, the same modest privacy they'd always lived by, now being stripped away under the harshest spotlight. America waited for a word. They gave none. In a nation addicted to opinions, their silence became its own kind of script. Then came October 14th, 2025, the Rose Garden, White House. The ceremony for Charlie Kirk's posthumous Medal of Freedom. Robert and Catherine stood side by side, their daughter Erica in between them. The air was heavy. Amazing grace echoed through the garden. This was their first public appearance since the tragedy, and, just like before, they spoke no words. But this time, their silence was the story. Observers described the moment as haunting, not for its glory, but for its restraint. Robert, in a black suit and steel blue tie, stared straight ahead. Catherine, pale but composed, held her hands close to her heart. Erica, tears trembling in her eyes, accepted the medal on her father's behalf. The cameras clicked endlessly, searching for emotion, for something, anything beyond the silence. President Trump called Charlie a patriot, a voice of faith and courage. Applause thundered through the garden. But the Kirks didn't move. No smiles, no nods, no performance. For them, this wasn't a ceremony, it was a collision between legacy and loss. Between the nation's applause and a family's quiet grief. And when the last note of Amazing Grace faded, they turned and walked away. No interviews. No final words. Just two parents disappearing into the same silence they'd carried since that September night. As the cameras dimmed, one question lingered. When all the noise dies down, what remains for those who never spoke? Maybe the Kirks are a reminder that real pain doesn't need an audience. It only needs truth, quietly remembered before the world moves on. Thank you for watching. Share your thoughts below, and we'll see you in the next part.